Nell Halloran had both hands on the barn phone when Marcus Hale took it off her, dropped it on the concrete, and put his heel through the screen. Post, he wiped his palm down his thigh. Your post is stall 9 to stall 22. Your post is not the north wing window. She had been at the north wing window for 11 seconds. That was all it took. She had been carrying a bucket of warm mash across the yard at 9:30 at night, and the curtain in the ground floor room had been open, and inside it a boy of 9 years old lay on a table with 4 men in shirt sleeves around him, and the boy's spine had been arching off the wood in a way she had seen exactly once before, in a bay colt named Bellwether. On a January morning she still could not think about without her jaw setting. She had put the bucket down in the snow and run. Marcus, listen to me. The boy in the north wing is seizing, and his jaw is locked open, and there is foam on him. And I know what that is. You know what that is. I do. You muck out stalls. He said it flat. Without heat, which was worse than heat. 11 years of barn work, 6 of them at farms where nobody could afford a vet, and the closest thing to one was whoever had the steadiest hands and the best nose. At Iron Hollow she was the night girl. She was 24. Hale paid her in cash, less whatever he decided she had cost him that fortnight, and there was nobody above him she was permitted to speak to. There is a compound. She was already moving toward the yard door. It grows in wet ditches. It smells like a parsnip when you crush the root, and it kills in under an hour, and if they think it is a fit they will be treating him for the wrong thing until he is dead. Hale got between her and the door. He had a farrier's rasp in his right hand, because he had been rasping down a chipped hoof when she came in shouting. And he did not swing it exactly. He brought it down across her forearm the way a man closes a gate. There was a sound out of her that she did not authorize. The rasp took skin off in a strip from the wrist bone to the middle of the forearm, and something under it gave. She went down on one knee in the aisle sawdust. 22 horses shifted in 22 stalls, all at once, the way they do. Post, he said it again on his way out. Beat 2. Cornered, she got up, which she thought later was the only genuinely brave thing she did all night, and she went for the door anyway, and Hale walked her backwards into the tack room with a flat hand on her collarbone, and shut the door and turned the key. The tack room at Iron Hollow was cedar-lined and warm and smelled of neatsfoot oil, and it had one window, 12 inches by 14, set high, with a steel mesh grill bolted over it on the outside, because a saddle in there was worth more than her car. Marcus, you will sit in there until you remember who signs your envelope. He is 9. He is not yours. She heard his boots go up the aisle. She heard the yard door. She heard nothing after that except the horses and the ticking of the water heater. She tried the obvious things in the obvious order, because panic is only useful if you spend it on the correct wall. The phone in the aisle was in pieces. Her own phone was in the staff lockbox at the gatehouse, because Iron Hollow took every phone off every human employee at the start of every shift and had done since long before she arrived, and she had never once asked why, and had lately started to have ideas about why. The house intercom did not run to the barn. The 2 security men on the estate had been hired by Hale. The nearest neighbour was 2.5 miles down a private road behind an electric gate. Her father was 300 miles east, and had not answered a call from her in 4 years. She stood in the middle of the tack room, with her ruined arm held against her stomach, and did the arithmetic on the boy instead. Cowbane went for the nerves first. The convulsions started inside 20 minutes of a real dose, and the breathing went inside 40. If they had him on a table already with his back arching, he was somewhere past the 20, which gave him, generously, 25 minutes. And they would be treating him for a seizure, because that is what it looks like, and every minute they spent treating him for a seizure was a minute of the 25 spent. And there was silver in it. She knew that too, though she could not have said yet how she knew it, only that the light on the boy's mouth had been wrong, too bright and too grey, like the rim of a galvanised trough. She looked up at the window. Then she remembered the receipt. There was a barn jacket on the peg by the bridle rack that had been hers for 2 winters, and in the inside pocket, folded into a square and gone soft as cloth from being carried, was a feed store receipt with a phone number on the back of it in fountain pen. 3 months earlier, a mare called Aisling had gone down colicking at 3:10 in the morning, and Nell had been alone with her for 2 hours, walking her, listening to her gut with a stethoscope she had bought herself, refusing to let the night groom give an injection that would have finished her. At 5:20 a man came down from the house in a black overcoat with no hat, and stood at the end of the aisle and watched her work without speaking. She had known who he was in the way that staff always know. Dorian Sarkany. He owned Iron Hollow and 11,000 acres around it, and a great many things that were not in Kentucky at all. Nobody had ever told her how old he was, and she had concluded that the answer was not a number anybody was going to say out loud in front of her. When the mare finally passed manure at 5:10 and Nell sat down in the sawdust and laughed, he came the length of the aisle and crouched down so their eyes were level. 4 grooms told me she was finished. 4 grooms were wrong. He had looked at her mouth then. Her lip had been split and closed over twice that month. Who did that? A horse threw its head. No, just that. Not an argument. He had taken a receipt off the shelf and a pen out of his coat, and written a number and folded it into her hand and closed her fingers on it. If the horse does it again, use this. I do not want anything from you. I have not offered you anything. That is a number. What you do about it is your business. Now she got the receipt out with her teeth and her good hand, and she looked through the crack under the door at the broken phone in the aisle, and she wanted to scream. Then she remembered the landline extension for feed orders mounted behind the door, which she had used exactly twice. She dialed. It rang once. Halloran, he knew her voice. She never afterwards got over that. Your son has cowbane in him. There is silver in it. Whatever they are treating him for, they are treating him for the wrong thing. He has under 20 minutes. I am locked in the tack room and I cannot get to you. There was a silence of about 1 second. Do not move from that room. 400 yards away, in the north wing, Dorian Sarkany lowered the phone from his ear and set it very carefully face down on a walnut side table, and everything in the room that was alive turned to look at him, and 2 of the things in the room that were not alive did as well. He had been standing at the foot of the table for 51 minutes, with his hands folded behind his back, which was what he did instead of screaming. There were 5 physicians. Dr. Emmerich Rausch had been practicing medicine since the reign of the Second George, and had a certificate on a wall in Vienna that no living authority could verify, and he had spent the last half hour explaining with enormous patience that the boy was in status epilepticus, that the family had a documented history, and that the correct course was to continue the benzodiazepine loading and wait. Stop, sir, we cannot stop the loading. Stop touching my son. Rausch stopped touching his son. What happened to Dorian's face over the next 4 seconds was not dramatic. It was the opposite. Everything ornamental went out of it. The warmth went, and the courtesy went. And the small human arrangement of the features that he had been maintaining continuously since about the year 1620 went with them, and what was left was very still and very old, and looked at Rausch with an interest that had nothing personal in it at all. Tobias Quint, who had been steward at Iron Hollow for 31 years and had seen this face precisely twice, put his hand flat on the doorframe to steady himself. Quint, sir, there is a girl locked in the tack room in the yearling barn. Marcus Hale has the key. Bring me the girl and bring me Hale, and if those 2 things cannot both be done at once, bring me the girl. Sir, The barn is 400 yards. I am aware of the distance. Rausch made the mistake of speaking. Sir, with the greatest respect, a stable hand cannot possibly know. Emmerich, Dorian was already at the window, and his hand was already on the sash, and the sash was already coming out of its frame in a shriek of paint and lead. What do you want? Say it out loud. Right now, in this room, say the thing you want. Rausch's mouth opened and closed. You want to be right. Dorian took the window frame in both hands. I want my son. That is the difference between us, and it is going to be the whole of tonight's argument. He went through the window, 17 minutes. Nell got the mounting block under the window and stood on it and found that the mesh grille was bolted from outside. 4 bolts, and the heads were rounded off and painted over. She got down. She started opening drawers with one hand. 17 minutes. Up at the house, the boys' arching stopped, and Rausch said something optimistic about it, and Quint, who had grown up on a farm in Northumberland and had watched a bullock die in a ditch in 1971, went the colour of ash, because he knew that when the arching stops it is not because the fit has broken. 15 minutes. She found a hoof knife, a rasp, a hammer, a jar of stall lime, and a canvas roll of clinch cutters, and she took the hammer. 14 minutes. Dorian crossed the south lawn. There was frost on it. He did not go round the ha-ha wall, he went over it, and a man who had been employed to stand at the corner of the walled garden and who saw approximately 1/4 of what happened afterwards, told the story for the rest of his life to people who did not believe him. 12 minutes. She could not swing the hammer with her right arm at all. She swung it left-handed at the window glass, and the glass went in 3 blows, and the grille behind it did not care. 11 minutes. The boy's breathing changed. Rausch called for suction. 9 minutes. Nell got the hoof knife into the gap between the grille frame and the cedar siding and levered, and the knife blade snapped off at the tang and opened her palm. 8 minutes. Somewhere back toward the house a voice said the name Elias, and there was no word in it that a person could repeat. 6 minutes. She went at the door instead, which was what she should have done first, and she got the hammer claw into the strike plate and started tearing the plate out of the jamb in strips, and she was crying, which she noted the way you note weather. 4 minutes. Quint arrived at the yearling barn at a dead run for the first time since the Clinton administration, without the key, because Marcus Hale had seen who was coming across the lawn and had done the arithmetic and had gone for his truck. Miss Halloran. The door is locked. The frame is soft. Hit it low. 2 minutes. Quint hit it low. He was 67 years old, and it took him 3 attempts. 50 seconds. She was running. Barn aisle, yard, gravel, snow, service steps, the long corridor with the horse prints on it that she had never once been permitted to walk down. 9 seconds. She came through the door of the north wing sitting room with blood down one arm and lime dust in her hair, and sawdust on both knees, and 11 people turned to look at her. And Dr. Emmerich Rausch straightened up from the table with a syringe in his hand and began to say something about the help. She was not looking at Rausch. She was looking at the boy. 4 seconds. That was the honest number. She saw the pupils, blown wide and fixed. She saw the froth at the corner of the mouth, white and heavy rather than thin. She saw the jaw locked open rather than clenched shut, which is what separates it from a fit. She saw the small grey shine on the lower lip that was not saliva. And she was close enough now to smell it, under the alcohol and the bleach and the cold, sweet and starchy and green, exactly and unmistakably the smell of a parsnip, cut open in a wet ditch in January. Calbane, her voice came out flat and very fast. Water hemlock, the root. It is cut with silver, colloidal, which is why he is not burning it out himself. He has been dosed by mouth in something sweet in the last hour and a half. It is not a seizure. He has never had a seizure in his life, and you have been treating him for one." Rausch laughed, once an awful little sound. "How? I have smelled it 3 times. Twice in a ditch, and once in a colt that died in front of me. You cannot forget it. What do you need? Get the silver out first, or nothing else works. He needs chelation, and he needs charcoal in him now, and he needs the airway held open because the next thing that fails is the diaphragm, and he will look like he is asleep when it happens." She turned on Rausch. "You have activated charcoal in that case. I can see the tin. Give it to me or use it." Rausch looked at Dorian. "Do not look at me." Dorian had not moved. "Look at her. She is the only person in this room who has been right tonight." And then the yard door banged, and Tobias Quint came in with 2 houseguards holding Marcus Hale between them by the elbows, because the truck had not started, because Quint had pulled the fuel line on it, which Nell only found out about a year later and never stopped loving him for. "Mr. Hale, this is her right forearm. Would you like to tell me what you used?" "Sir," she was leaving her post. She was hysterical. "I had to." The rasp. Dorian had picked up her wrist so gently that she did not feel the joint move. 14 inches, mill-file cut, and you brought it down flat. "Quint," is his rasp in his truck or in his hand. "In the aisle, sir, fetch it." He broke Marcus Hale's right forearm with the rasp in front of 11 witnesses. 1 stroke, the same bone, the same place, and it made the same sound. He handed the rasp back to Quint and did not look at Hale again. "You are not going to prison." He was talking to the wall over Hale's head. "Prison is a public expense. Every dollar you have taken out of that girl's envelope will be recovered from you personally by 4 attorneys who bill more in an hour than you cleared in a year. Then you will be found, quietly, wherever you have gone, by someone who is not me. Take him out." Then he crossed the carpet, and in front of the physicians and the steward and the guards and his dying son, Dorian Sarkany went down on one knee in front of a stable girl with lime in her hair. "Tell me what to do." His voice had changed completely. "And I will do it." They worked for 2 hours and 10 minutes. She talked and Rausch's hands did it, because Rausch's hands were 400 years better than hers, and both of them knew it, and neither of them ever mentioned it again. Charcoal by tube. The airway held. A chelating agent that Rausch produced from a locked case after she described the grey shine on the lip, and which he administered with an expression of profound personal grievance. At some point Dorian was holding his son's head in both hands, and speaking to him in a language that had no living speakers left, and Nell looked away because it was not hers to watch. At 2:10 in the morning the boy's diaphragm caught properly on its own, and his pupils came down to something like a normal size, and he made a small irritable noise about the tube in his throat. Rausch sat down on a footstool and put his face in his hands. Nell got as far as the corridor before her legs stopped agreeing with her, and Dorian caught her before she reached the floor, and she came round on a sofa in a room she had never seen, with her sleeve cut off at the shoulder and her forearm laid out on a towel. Do not what? The towel is white. He stopped what he was doing and looked at her. I have got barn on me. She tried to lift her arm off the towel, and he stopped her. I have got lime and blood, and I have not washed properly since a shift I started at 4. Give me a horse blanket and put me in the feed room. I am not being humble at you. That is a $200 towel, and I am the reason it is ruined, and I would rather not be one more thing on the list. What list? There is always a list. She was watching the ceiling. I am the bill that comes due. That is all. It is not tragic. It is just accounting. He set her wrist without answering, which hurt like the end of the world, and splintered it, and cleaned the palm, and taped the strip of forearm where the rasp had taken the skin, and he did all of it without once making the sound of a man being patient with someone. You saved my son's life. Anyone with a nose would have caught it. 11 people had noses tonight. Yes, well, she shut her eyes. You can pay me the fortnight Hale kept, and we will call it even. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said something she did not understand at all until the following evening, when it stopped being a strange remark and started being the whole shape of her life. Nell, nobody is going to be able to call anything even after tonight. Not you, not me. You named it out loud. She woke at 11 the next morning in a bed that was so large she had to go looking for the edge of it. The room she had been sleeping in for 2 years had a bed, a hook, a milk crate, a window that did not open, and a radiator that came on at random and smelled of scorched dust. This room had 8 windows. It had a fireplace with a fire actually burning in it, laid by somebody while she slept, which she found more alarming than anything else in the house. Her boots were by the door, cleaned, and standing beside them, incomprehensibly, was a new pair of the exact same boots, in the exact same size, and she stood looking at those 2 pairs of boots for a very long time. Dorian knocked on the open door with 2 knuckles at 11:30 carrying a tray, and on the tray were 4 scrambled eggs, toast, a pot of tea, and a jar of blackberry jam with a supermarket label on it. I am told this is what people eat. He set the tray across her knees. I have not personally eaten in a while. How long is a while? 1631. She ate all of it. He sat in the window seat with one ankle across his knee and watched the yard and let her. He is awake. He poured the tea. He is furious about the tube. He wants to know who the girl with the hair was. Tell him she says stall 4 still has not been mucked out. I will tell him exactly that. She put the fork down. I need to ask you a thing, and I need you to not manage me about it. Somebody put it in him. It does not grow in Kentucky in January, and it cannot walk into a house, and it cannot put itself in something sweet. Somebody in this house, or somebody through somebody in this house, did that to a 9-year-old. Yes, then why are you sitting in a window seat? Because I have 411 years of evidence that the second dose comes while everyone is running, and because whoever did it is still on this estate, and because if I leave this corridor I am not here when they try again. He turned his head. And because I do not yet know what to do about you. About me. You are about to find out what you did last night, and I would rather you were fed first. She had time to say what does that mean and no more, because the double doors at the far end of the room opened without anyone having knocked on them. There were 6 of them. 5 stayed in the corridor. The one who came in was a woman in a charcoal coat with a thin document folder under her arm, and she was not young in any sense of the word, and she looked at the tray and the fire and the bed with a splintered arm in it before she looked at Dorian at all. Sverren Corvain. Dorian did not get up. Third envoy. You have come through my doors without permission, which is the 3rd mistake this house has produced in 14 hours. I have come to correct the second one. Sverren put the folder on the table. At 11:40 last night, in front of 11 witnesses, a human employee of yours stated aloud that a substance was cowbane compounded with colloidal silver. That compound is manufactured in one facility on this earth. It is our facility. Under Article 9 of the Ostend Accord, naming a signatory's proprietary compound in connection with an act of violence constitutes a formal accusation. She was diagnosing a child. The Accord does not have a clause for that. Nell had stopped breathing somewhere around the word facility. She said it in front of 2 of your own physicians, a steward, and 4 members of a household that talks. It is already in Antwerp. It is already in Chicago. By Friday 4 houses will have heard that a Concord product was used on a child, and not as a rumour, as an identification. Do you understand what that does to a business built entirely on nobody being able to identify anything? So it is money. It is always money. You have simply never had to notice. Sverine looked directly at Nell for the first time. Miss Halloran. How long did it take you? Nell's mouth was very dry. 4 seconds. 4 seconds. Sverine said it to Dorian, not to her. 11 years in a barn and 4 seconds. Do you see the problem now? Our chemist spent 200 years making a thing that cannot be found in the body or in the glass. And it turns out it can be found by a girl who has smelled a dead colt. She is not a witness. She is an instrument. We will take her. No, the demand is formal. Sverine did not raise her voice. Surrender of the accuser for examination. Retraction of the naming, in writing, before Friday. In exchange, the Concord opens no inquiry into how a 9-year-old came to be poisoned in a house we will otherwise be obliged to describe as negligent. Nell put the fork down. You did it. The room went very quiet. I beg your pardon. You wanted the boy dead. You would not be standing here being clever about paperwork if the paperwork was the point. You needed it to look like a fit, and it nearly did. And the only reason we are standing here is that a man broke my arm at the wrong moment and locked me in a tack room with a phone number somebody had left in a coat. Sverine looked at her with something that was almost respect and was mostly appetite. Sarkany, surrender the instrument. Dorian stood up. He did not do anything else. He took his cuff between 2 fingers and folded it back once, and Sverine Corvain, who was 240 years old and had walked into that house entirely unafraid, took 1 step backwards. If you send anybody for her, I will not go to your envoys and I will not go to your enforcers. I will go to Antwerp and take the facility apart wall by wall with these hands while your chemists watch, and then I will start on the chemists. You may write that down. You will stand alone. Sverine was already in the doorway. Not one house will back a king who shelters a human accuser against the accord. Not one. You have made yourself very small tonight for a girl who shovels manure. Then I will be small. The doors closed. Nell sat in the enormous bed with a fork in her hand, and understood, completely and all at once, what she had done by opening her mouth. He found her in the yearling barn at 4 in the afternoon, with a canvas bag on her shoulder. She had walked the 400 yards in the new boots, because the old ones had blood in them. And she had packed the way people pack when they have moved 11 times, fast and without decisions. 2 shirts, a photograph, the stethoscope. She was standing in front of stall 4, with her hand flat on Ashling's neck when he came down the aisle. You do not get a vote. I get 1 vote. I am aware it is 1. She kept her hand on the mare. You will stand alone. She said that in front of me, deliberately, so that I would hear it. And she was right, and you know she was right, and the arithmetic is not complicated. You have a son who nearly died last night, and a house full of people who have worked for you for 30 years, and whatever 11,000 acres and 400 years buys a man. Against all of that, you have got me, and I am a stable girl with a broken arm. That is not the arithmetic. It is the only arithmetic there is. She turned around. Do you want to know what my father said to me? The week he sold the farm, my mother was sick for 2 years and there was no insurance and it ate everything, and when it was finished he sat me down at the kitchen table and told me the debt had a name on it, and the name was mine. Not hers. Mine, because she was dying and somebody had to be the reason. He was a coward. He was tired. She wiped her face with the back of her splinted hand, awkwardly, but he was not wrong about the shape of it, and I have never once in my life been in a room where I was not the bill that comes due. I get fed, and something goes short. I get hired, and somebody's hours get cut. Last night I opened my mouth for 4 seconds, and it cost you every ally you have on this earth. That is not self-pity, Dorian. That is a pattern with 11 years of data behind it. And if you walk down that road tonight, they take you inside a mile, and they open you up to find out how the nose works, and my son grows up knowing what it costs to keep him. Then he learns young. He is 9. Then let me go, and tell him I quit. He did not take her arm. He did not step into her path. He put his hands in his coat pockets, which she understood afterwards was the most careful thing anyone had ever done in front of her. Give me 10 minutes in the house first. Then the road is yours, and I will open the gate myself. He took her to the library, shut the door, and put one knee down on the boards for the second time in 14 hours. No, you look ridiculous. I have been the tallest thing in every room I have entered since the reign of Rudolph II, and it has done nothing for me at all. Let me try this instead. You said the debt had a name on it. I intend to take that apart line by line, and you will stand there and let me. Dorian, I have had 411 years of company. He said it very quietly. Do you understand what that is? It is not romantic. It is dinners. It is people who want the house, or the name, or the protection, or the thing I am. It is 11 envoys a year, and every one of them opens their mouth, and I know the shape of the sentence before the third word. Sverine Corvain stood in that room this morning, and she was surprised precisely once, and it was not by me, and I have been surprised by nothing for a century and a half. That is not fair. Second line. You said you cost people money. He looked up. Last night you cost me a physician's pride and a stable master's forearm and every treaty relationship I have accumulated since the Napoleonic Wars, and in exchange my son asked this morning who the girl in the doorway was. Say the number that makes that a bad trade. Say it out loud. I will wait. She could not. Third line. You said you have never been in a room where you were not the bill.
You have been in one since 2:10 this morning, and you have not noticed, because nobody in it has been keeping the account. Nobody here is keeping the account. There is no account. You are the king of a house that is about to be at war because of me. Because of Sverine Corvain, who poisoned a child, which she did before she had ever heard your name.
He stood up then, slowly, and I want to be precise about one thing, because you will decide tonight that I did this out of gratitude, and you will be wrong, and it will poison everything afterwards. I did not come down that lawn for a diagnosis. I have owned this land for 60 years, and I have gone into that barn twice. The first time was to look at a mare. The second was in October, at 5:20 in the morning, because I could not sleep, and because Quint had told me the night girl had refused 4 grown men over a colicking horse, and had been right. I stood at the end of that aisle for 11 minutes before you saw me. That was not pity. I lost pity somewhere around the Second Ottoman siege. What I have instead is a very long memory and an extremely short list, and this morning I discovered you had been on it since October. The fire moved. Somewhere out in the passage a clock did something ornate. Say the sentence again. The one about the bill. Say it to me now. She opened her mouth. She could not get it out. There, that is all I wanted. She sat down on the arm of a chair because the alternative was falling over. They are coming tonight. It was not a question. They are coming tonight. Sverine gave me until Friday, which is how a Concord envoy says before dawn. She has 5 with her that I have seen, and I would guess 9 that I have not. And you will be in the wrong part of the house when it starts. Yes, he did not soften it, which is why I am going to offer you something. I want you to hear the whole of it, including the parts I would rather not say, and then tell me no if it is no. He held out his hand, palm up. Across the palm was a scar she had not seen before, thin and silver and very old. A binding. He did not close his hand. It is old and simple, and it is not a marriage and not ownership, and it does not make you what I am. It is a share. What runs in me runs in you for as long as it lasts, which for a human is somewhere between 2 days and 4. You will see in the dark. You will be able to lift the front of a car and hear a man breathing through a wall. And for 3 days everything anyone eats within 30 feet of you will smell like the inside of their own mouth, which you are going to hate more than you can currently imagine. And the parts you would rather not say, it hurts. Considerably, and I will know where you are for the rest of your life, which I cannot switch off, and it is not nothing to be findable by a thing like me. He held her eyes. And it does not save you. If they take you, it makes you harder to take. That is all. I am not handing you a rescue. I am handing you a chance to be in the fight rather than in a cupboard. Why does it need my consent? Because a binding taken without it does not work. That is not ethics. That is mechanics. It is the one honest thing in my entire world. Nell looked at his open palm for a long moment. 11 years of being handed things she had not asked for. Wages minus deductions, rooms with radiators that came on at random, a farm with a name on the debt. Everything in her life had been done to her by somebody who had decided in advance what she could carry. Do not do it for me. I was not going to. No, listen. She stood up off the arm of the chair. You are going to hold your hand there and not move it and not help me. Because if you do it to me, I will spend the rest of my life being a thing that was done. I will do it. Nell, hold still. And she took the hoof knife out of her belt, the one with the snapped blade, and she opened her own palm with it before she opened his, and she was the one who put the two together and closed her fingers and held on, and she was the one who did not let go when it started, and it was, as promised, considerable. They came in at 1:10 in the morning through the orangery, which was glass, which was stupid, which was deliberate, because the actual entry was 6 men through the service stair on the north side, while everybody looked at the noise. Nell was in the boys' room with Elias. She had spent the 4 hours since the binding learning that Dorian had undersold the smelling. The house was a screaming chaos of information. She could smell the beeswax on the stairs and the iron in the radiator water, and the fear coming off the 2 guards outside the door in a sharp, bright wave like cut onions, and she could hear Quint on the ground floor 2 rooms and 1 ceiling away asking somebody whether the west gate had been closed. Elias Sarkany, 9 years old, sat up against 3 pillows with his voice wrecked from the tube and watched her pace. You are the girl with the hair. I am. My father is downstairs killing people. Yes, what do you want? It was exactly his father's cadence, and she nearly laughed. Everybody in this house wants something, and nobody says. I want you to keep breathing. And I want stall 4 mucked out, and I want the next fortnight to be boring. Downstairs a door came off its hinges, and she felt it in her back teeth. She could not see the fight, and she was glad. What reached her was worse and better than seeing. A sound of something large going through a banister. Spherine's voice, saying a word twice. A silence of about 4 seconds that was somehow the loudest part of it. Then Dorian, not shouting, saying a name she did not know, and after that a noise she chose never afterwards to describe to anybody, and then feet on the main stair, too many of them, coming up. The 2 guards outside the door died between one breath and the next. She heard both, and then the under-butler came through the connecting door from the dressing room with a glass of water on a tray for the boy, and he said, "Miss, you are wanted downstairs," and Nell stopped moving entirely. Because Ansel Rue smelled of parsnip, sweet and starchy and green, under the soap, in the creases of his hands, where a man gets it when he has crushed a root and has been washing 4 times a day for 2 days and cannot get it out because it does not come out. "Put the tray down, Ansel. Miss, you have been washing your hands for 2 days and it has not worked." She had the farrier's rasp off the bedside table, where she had put it that afternoon for no reason she could have defended at the time. That is the second dose in that glass. Say what you want. Everybody in this house says it eventually. And Ansel Rue, 26 years in service, looked at the boy in the bed and said, "I want my daughter back." They have had her since June. Then he threw the tray and went for the window latch, and Nell got to him first, and he was through it and gone into the dark, and she stood there with the rasp in her fist and the glass smashed at her feet and the dressing-room door standing open behind her. The first one was fast, and she was faster, which surprised them both. He had come at her low, expecting a girl in a nightshirt with a broken arm, and she was not there when he arrived, and the sheer novelty of that bought her the half-second she needed to get her back to the bed and the boy behind her and the jar in her left hand. Stall lime. She had carried it up from the barn that afternoon, along with the rasp, and put both on the bedside table, and Quint had looked at them, and had said nothing at all, which is why Quint had been steward for 31 years. She threw the whole jar underhand into his face. Lime and blood do a thing that lime and skin do not, and he had come into the room with blood on him already, and what happened next took his eyes out of the fight entirely. He went sideways into the fire surround, with both hands up. The second one stopped in the doorway. "You are the girl." "Yes, they said you were an instrument." "Yes, and this is the part where I explain that a rasp is 14 inches of hardened steel with a tang on it, and I have been sharpening the ends of them for 11 years, because it is the only thing in a barn that will get a stone out of a shoe." She went at the blinded one first, because you never leave a man behind you, and she went the way you go at a colt that is coming down on top of you, which is inside and low and without any negotiation, and she put the tang of the farrier's rasp up under his jaw and through the soft floor of the mouth with the whole weight of her shoulder behind it, and every single thing that Dorian Sarkany had put into her blood 4 hours earlier. He came off the floor. He did not come off it far. She let go of the rasp and stepped back, and he went down between the fire surround and the window and did not get up, and the second man in the doorway had not moved at all. He was 400 years old. He was standing in front of a child. She was aware distantly that she was shaking so hard she could hear her own splint against the bedpost, and that Elias Sarkany was sitting bolt upright, with both hands over his mouth. She got the poker off the fire irons with her left hand. "You can go out the way he came in, or you can find out whether I can do that twice." And the second man, who had been sent to collect an instrument, took one long look at the girl standing between him and the air, with a poker in the wrong hand and lime dust on her sleeve, and went backwards out of the door. Dorian came up the north stair 4 minutes later, and what he found in the doorway stopped him completely. He had crossed a house. He had a wound down the left side of him that was closing as he stood there. He had come up those stairs in a state that Quint would only describe afterwards as not something you look directly at, and he arrived at the door of his son's room absolutely prepared to be too late. His son was awake, propped on 3 pillows, watching. There was a dead Concord enforcer on the boards with a farrier's rasp through his jaw. There was a second one at the fire surround. There was a girl standing between the bed and the door with a fire iron in her left hand and blood running off her fingers, and she turned around when he came in, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "The under-butler did it." Ansel Rue. They have his daughter, they have had her since June, and he went out of that window 90 seconds ago, and he will still be on the grounds. Dorian looked at her for a long moment. You did this. I had Lyme. You had Lyme. Something happened to his face that his son afterwards refused to explain to anybody. He found Sverine Corvain in the orangery, where she had gone when the sound from the north wing did not stop, and he did not make a speech to her, because he had already made it once in a bedroom that morning, and he was not a man who repeated himself. What was left of her went back to Antwerp in a sealed case in the boot of her own car. The 2 surviving enforcers he brought into the front hall in front of Quint and the 4 remaining guards and Rausch, and he had them stood upright, and he addressed them as though they were couriers, which is exactly what they now were. You will tell the Concord 4 things. 1. The compound is named and will stay named, and every house that asks will be told what was in that child, and I will spell it for them. 2. The girl is not surrendered, not on Friday, not ever, and any person who comes down that road for her is not a matter for the Accord, they are a matter for me personally. 3. Ansel Rue has a daughter, taken in June, and she will be at the gate of this house by 6 in the morning, and if she is not, I will begin in Antwerp at 7. 4. He looked at the older of the 2. 4. Tell them it took her 4 seconds, and tell them she did the rest herself. The house went quiet by 4 in the morning, in the ugly way that houses go quiet. Nell sat on the back steps by the kitchen garden with a mug of tea she was not drinking, her splint soaked through and lime dust still in her hair, and watched the sky over the yearling barn go from black to something with grey in it. Dorian came out and stood at the bottom of the steps and did not sit down. You saw. I heard. That is worse. He was looking at the barn. There is a thing I am supposed to say now that I have never once meant, and I am going to mean it, and you are not going to like it. What is in that hall tonight is what I am. Not what I did, not what circumstances required. What I am. I have been managing it in front of people since before your country existed, and I managed it very badly tonight, and you were 9 feet away, and I would like to tell you that it will not happen again, and I am not going to insult you. Are you finished? Almost. You should go. Not tonight, and not to a road, but somewhere with a gate and money on it. And you should let me be a thing that happened to you in January. He put his hands in his coat pockets. I am a monster, Nell. I am not being poetic. Nell put the mug down on the step. She got up, and went down the 3 steps in the dark, and took his face in both hands, the splintered one and the torn one, and turned his head so he had to look at her instead of at the barn. In October, you told me that if the horse did it again, I should use the number. He went very still. The horse did it again. Her thumb was on his cheekbone. Last night, with a rasp, in the aisle, in front of 22 witnesses that cannot talk. And I used the number, and you came out of a window and across a lawn for a girl you had spoken to once. And you are standing in my kitchen garden at 4 in the morning, telling me to be afraid of you. She shook his head, very slightly, the way you correct a horse. I have lived my whole life around big animals. I know exactly what I am touching. I was never once confused about what you were, Dorian, and I put my own hand on that knife anyway. If you are about to tell me I did not know what I was choosing, then you have understood nothing about me since October. He closed his eyes. Say it again. The thing you said in the library. There is no account. Good, she let go of his face. Because I am about to bill you for a jar of lime. Ansel Rue's daughter came through the gate at 5:30 in the morning in the back of a car with Antwerp plates, and Ansel Rue was found sitting against the wall of the walled garden waiting to be taken, and what Dorian Sarkany decided to do about him is a longer story, and not this one. Rausch stayed. He and Nell did not become friends. They became something more useful, which is two people who check each other's work. Elias asked for her by name every morning for 6 weeks. And on the first day of February at 6 in the morning, with the frost still on the yard and a black car sitting at the top of the drive that had been sent by a house in Chicago wanting an audience, Nell Halloran walked out of the north wing in a borrowed coat, past the steward, past 2 guards, past the king of an 11,000-acre estate, who was standing at the door of the yearling barn, waiting for her with a wheelbarrow he did not know how to hold. She took the barrow off him and looked into stall 4. Right, she put the barrow down where she wanted it. It has been 4 days. Someone in this house is going to explain to me how a barn with 60 full-time staff has not mucked out 1 stall since Thursday. And then somebody is going to hold this while I find a fork. That is what the story is about, in the end. Not the poison, and not the king, and not the 4 seconds. It is about the fact that nobody in that house had ever asked the girl in the barn what she knew, and that when she finally said it out loud, the whole world came for her, and she picked up a rasp and stayed exactly where she was. If you want to know what happened when Chicago came to the door, tell me in the comments, because I am already writing it. Like this one if Nell earned it. Share it with somebody who has been the person nobody asked, and subscribe with the bell on, because the next one is worse, and it is coming on Sunday.